Welcome, viewers, to Global Conflict Explained. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most complex and dangerous geopolitical tensions of our time, the ongoing conflict between NATO and Russia. This topic matters now more than ever because it influences global stability, economic systems, military alliances, and even the daily lives of millions around the world. From rising energy costs to shifting political alliances, its impact can be felt far beyond Europe. Understanding this conflict isn't just about politics, it's about recognizing how history, power, and perceptions shape the world we live in today, and how decisions made by global leaders ripple across continents. It also helps us better understand why global tensions seem to be increasing and how interconnected modern conflicts truly are. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Historical background. To truly understand why Russia and NATO are in conflict, we must go back several decades to the end of the Cold War. After World War II, Europe was divided into two major blocs, the Western Alliance led by the United States and the Eastern Bloc led by the Soviet Union. NATO was formed in 1949 as a military alliance to counter Soviet influence, while the Soviet Union created its own alliance known as the Warsaw Pact. For decades, these two sides stood in opposition during what became known as the Cold War, a period marked by political tension, nuclear threats, arms races, and ideological rivalry between capitalism and communism. However, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, marking a turning point in global history and ending a decades-long bipolar world order. Many believed this would lead to lasting peace in Europe and a new era of cooperation. But instead of dissolving, NATO began expanding eastward, incorporating former Soviet-aligned countries such as Poland, Hungary, and the Baltic states. From NATO's perspective, this expansion was about promoting stability, democracy, and security in post-Cold War Europe. However, from Russia's perspective, it was seen as a direct threat to its security, influence, and historical sphere of control. Russian leaders often argued that informal assurances were given during the early 1990s that NATO would not expand further east, although this remains a subject of debate among historians. Maps from the 1990s to today clearly show NATO moving closer to Russia's borders. This gradual shift became one of the foundational reasons behind today's conflict. Russia began to feel increasingly encircled and strategically pressured, while NATO maintained that every country has the sovereign right to choose its own alliances without external interference. This fundamental disagreement over security and sovereignty continues to shape tensions even today. Key events. Several major events intensified tensions between Russia and NATO over time. One of the most significant was the 2008 NATO summit, where discussions began about potentially including Ukraine and Georgia as future members. For Russia, this was a red line and a serious security concern, as both countries lie within what it considers its strategic neighborhood. Later that same year, Russia went to war with Georgia, signaling that it was willing to use military force to prevent NATO expansion near its borders. This conflict served as a warning to the West that Russia would actively resist what it perceived as encroachment and would act decisively to protect its interests. Another major turning point came in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. Ukraine, a country positioned strategically between Russia and NATO-aligned Europe, became the center of global attention. After political unrest in Ukraine led to a shift toward Western alignment, Russia responded by taking control of Crimea, a region it considered historically, culturally, and strategically vital, particularly due to its access to the Black Sea.
This move was widely condemned internationally and led to economic sanctions against Russia. NATO also increased its military presence in Eastern Europe, conducting exercises and deploying troops to reassure member states, further escalating tensions and reinforcing divisions. Then came 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This marked the most serious military conflict in Europe since World War II. NATO did not directly enter the war, but provided Ukraine with weapons, intelligence, training, and financial support. This indirect involvement further deepened the divide between NATO and Russia and raised fears of a broader confrontation that could extend beyond Ukraine. Current situation. Today, the conflict remains unresolved and highly volatile. Russia continues military operations in Ukraine, while NATO countries continue to support Ukraine without deploying their own troops directly into combat, maintaining a delicate balance to avoid direct war while still influencing the outcome. Tensions remain high for several reasons. First, there is the ongoing question of Ukraine's future, whether it will eventually join NATO or remain neutral. Second, both sides are heavily armed, including nuclear capabilities, which raises the stakes dramatically and makes any escalation extremely dangerous for the entire world. Military exercises, troop deployments, and political rhetoric on both sides continue to fuel uncertainty. Cyber warfare, economic sanctions, and information campaigns have become key tools in this modern conflict, showing that warfare today is not just fought on battlefields, but also in digital, economic, and psychological spaces where narratives and public opinion matter greatly. Additionally, trust between Russia and NATO has significantly eroded over the years. Diplomatic channels still exist, but meaningful negotiations have been limited and often unsuccessful. Each side views the other with deep suspicion, making compromise more difficult and prolonging the conflict while increasing global anxiety. Global impact. The Russia-NATO conflict is not just a regional issue, it has global consequences. Economically, the war has disrupted energy supplies, especially in Europe, leading to rising fuel prices, inflation, and economic uncertainty worldwide. Many countries that relied on Russian energy have had to rapidly rethink their strategies and seek alternative sources, accelerating shifts toward renewable energy and new partnerships. Food security has also been affected. Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of grain, and disruptions in its production and exports have impacted global food prices, particularly in developing nations that depend heavily on these supplies, increasing the risk of hunger and instability. Politically, the conflict has reshaped alliances. Countries are reevaluating their defense policies, increasing military spending, and strengthening partnerships. NATO itself has grown stronger and more unified, even gaining new members as countries seek protection against potential threats and instability in an increasingly uncertain world. At the same time, this conflict has deepened divisions between Western nations and countries that either support Russia or choose to remain neutral. This has contributed to a more fragmented global order, where cooperation is increasingly difficult and geopolitical competition is rising across multiple regions. The risk of escalation also looms large. Any miscalculation, accident, or sudden shift in strategy could lead to a broader conflict involving multiple nations, which is why the world continues to watch this situation closely with concern and caution. The conflict between Russia and NATO is rooted in history, shaped by key events, and driven by ongoing strategic concerns. It is a complex issue with no easy solutions, involving questions of security, sovereignty, influence, and global power balance. As we look toward the future, one critical question remains. Can diplomacy prevail, or are we entering a new era of prolonged global tension? The answer will not only determine the fate of Europe, but will also shape the direction of international relations for decades to come, influencing peace, stability, and cooperation across the world while affecting generations to come. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.